I'm Eyck. I'm the executive chef at the Charting Clubhouse, responsible for all the Western food. Thanks for joining me today. Today we do one of my favorite dishes, or soups actually. It's an onion soup, a French onion soup. Classically it's called a French onion soup. We do a little twist today, which is a recipe I cooked for the first time at the Dorchester in London, and I quite like this idea. So classically it's onion, usually white. I use red and white onion. The red onions will have a slightly spicier taste, which gives it an interesting factor to the soup. We have some cheese, classically Gruyere, or this one is some American cheddar, which goes on a slice of baguette and getting fatinated. We have some thyme, a little bit of bay leaf, which goes in the soup. For the cheese croutons, I season this one with a little bit of Worcester sauce, touch of mustard, small amount of the smoked paprika, which again gives it an interesting note. And we're using white wine, beef stock, some oil, vegetable oil, olive oil is also fine. And I put Guinness in. As I said, this recipe we cooked at the Dorchester for the first time, and the Guinness gives it a little bit more of, the onions can be quite sweet when you sweat them for a long period to get all the flavor out. So I'm adding the Guinness, which gives us a slightly bitter note, which I think works very well with the onion soup. So let's get started. We have a hot pot here. We will use the oil. For the onion, as I said, we use white onions. So usually what we have on the onion, we have the tip and the root. Yeah, this grows inside. This we will cut out. It's a little bit bitter, so this we will cut out. What we then do, instead of slicing the onion this way, I slice the onion, cut them in half first, and then slice them like for lyonnaise. The reason for that, the onion is slightly smaller, because anyone who had an onion soup, they know it's quite a messy affair if the onion slice is bigger than your spoon. So to avoid that, I cut it in half. Nice and fine. That should do. This one's a bit chunky. We'll put this away. And then the same for the red onions. Just peel them, take the layer off. Very nice in color. And as I said, slightly spicier in taste than your normal white onion. We do the same, cut in half, take the root out. Same on the other side. Lengthway in half. This is the mother of all French soups. So any bistro will have an onion soup, or should have an onion soup on the menu. And so do we at Charting Clubhouse, up on the Bistro Counter, which is our new concept. It's actually the best selling dish of all the things we have on the menu. People come and eat our onion soup. Some appreciate the slightly bitter taste from the Guinness. Actually, most appreciate the slightly bitter taste from the Guinness. Some prefer it the classical way. But that's the beauty of food. You can actually add your personal touches, and if we would all cook the same, and everything would be the same worldwide, how boring would the world be? Hot pan, a little bit of oil. And what is very important when you cook the onion soup is the sweating process. Yeah, this can take up to 5-10 minutes. Just to really sweat the onions, to caramelize the onion, to get all the flavor out. It's a relatively, from ingredient wise, relatively cheap with the ingredients, but the attention is has to be in the detail of cooking this dish to get the full flavor and a good soup out. Goes in the pan. Try not to pile it up too high, because as I said, we want to caramelize. And the heat in the pan only comes from the bottom, so that's the only part where it will caramelize. So fill your pan about half full, That's a good indicator that you get a nice colorization on your onions. Again, some people put a little bit of garlic in. We have quite a few members who prefer no garlic, so I'm cooking this one without. But at home, if you cook it at home and you like garlic, please feel free to put a good clove of garlic in there to enhance the flavor. As the onions are sweating, I'll put a little bit of sugar on, just a little pinch. That will help the caramelization process of the onion and brings out the sweetness in the onion as well. Anyone who knows or who likes to eat raw onions, they know it can be quite an, I don't want to say an aggressive taste, but quite a distinctive taste, which is completely different to what we achieve with the soup. Because as we sweat up the onions and the sugar inside the onion will give it this nice, sweet, caramelized flavor, which makes this dish so special. And as you can see on my eyes, I'm crying here a little bit, so the onion is quite strong. But no pain, no gain. What we also have in there is a bay leaf, which can go at this stage in, and some, so you can show it, see it, some fresh thyme. And as we caramelize the onions, I'm just going to get a little bit ahead. We take just the leaves of the thyme. If they're very thin, if it's very fresh and young thyme, you can also chop the stems. I just take it off here, so all we left with is the leaves. Thyme, one of my favorite herbs in cooking. It goes in almost 50% of my dishes. It's a shame you can't smell this because you already see how the flavor of the onion develops. And from the aggressive look and taste at the beginning, now we're already at a caramelized sweet stage. I don't know if you can see this. So this is halfway there. 5 more minutes. In the meantime, I'm chopping the thyme nice and fine. Some people just put a sprig of thyme in as they cook it. I quite like thyme, so I chop it finely and it stays in the soup. Just like so, and we add this to it. We sweat it for 2 or 3 minutes with the onion. And again, you already have a nice color on the. This is quite a nutritious soup, quite nourishing, because obviously of the beef stock. Gives it a good aroma and also the right nutrients. The onions need to be completely soft. All in all, it takes about 20 minutes from the start, 20-25 minutes from the start to cook the onion soup. Again, take your time, don't rush it. You know, the caramelization of the onions, the sweating of the onions. I cannot stress how important that is for the overall result and taste. Very good. You can put a little bit of one juniper berry in there, which again helps the aroma. Once we have this nice color on there, we deglaze it with a little bit of dry white wine. And when cooking with wine, I mean, you could leave it out, but again, it's a French soup classically, and there is white wine in almost every dish the French are cooking. This is part of their life, part of their culture, and they have excellent wines. For the sake of cooking, you don't need the best of wines, white wines, but they're good. It should be a dry white wine to counterbalance the sweetness of the onions. Wine should be completely reduced. Which is the case now. No more wine left. Then we have the Guinness. Again, this is purely my recipe, purely my choice. You can do without Guinness. Some people like to cook it with a little bit of Madeira wine from the island of Madeira, fortified wine belonging to Portugal in the Atlantic. Quite nice, gives it a nice aroma. But I quite like the idea of the Guinness, and I'm sure the Irish are happy to see a little bit of Guinness going in that soup, and it also gives it a nice color. Yeah, so the same with the wine. We're reducing the Guinness by half now, so not completely reduced, just by half to take out that beer flavor. So we just left with the alcohol is gone, and we just left with the flavor of the beer. You can see already color quite nice. While this is reducing, I'm going to start with our croutons, cheese croutons. So what we have is a baguette, and we just, not too thin, not too thick. Some people like to cut thick. I think for me this is actually quite a nice size and thickness. Cook the soup over here, so we can do the crouton. For the crouton, I just lightly fry it. Some people dry it in the oven. I fry it in a little bit of oil. Again, just for the texture of the crouton and for the flavor. So a little hot pan, a little bit of oil, and then we just fry the crouton golden brown on both sides. Our onion soup is coming along nicely. Maybe a touch more Guinness. Would be a shame to waste it. I mean, obviously, if you're the chef, I'm at work, otherwise I would have a little sip. But for you at home, there is no reason why you can't have a little sip of Guinness while you're cooking. Again, the smell, very aromatic, the thyme is coming through, the bay leaf is coming through, the juniper. Very nice soup. Very simple, very cheap ingredients, so to say, but the result, pretty tasty. So you just need a slight golden color on the crouton. We also have a similar onion soup. I'm from Erfurt in Germany, former East Germany. And we have a town, Weimar, famous for its poets and philosophers, and obviously also the not so good history we had there. But Weimar is very famous for their onion. They actually have an onion market twice a year where they celebrate the onion, and they also have an onion soup, and they cook it with a little bit of cumin, which is a very popular spice in German cooking. So the Guinness is reduced by half where we want it, and now we add the beef stock. Beautiful. If you don't have beef stock at home, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with using a stock cube, like your instant powder, or even some chicken stock as well. So don't worry too much. Beef stock is quite a lengthy one. but maybe, or a can. I'm not sure if you actually can buy a can of beef stock in the supermarket. Good. Our croutons are done. Nice golden color, as you can see, a little crunchy, which will help the texture. I like to put a little bit, usually you can make a mix, or you grate your cheese and you mix it with the Worcester sauce, the mustard, and the paprika. I keep it a little bit more simple. So I'm just going to spread a little bit of the mustard on the toast. Again, that gives it a little bit of flavor, and as a German, I do like mustard. We have the Dijon mustard, very nice mustard oil from France, from the Dijon region. And then I just slice the cheese. Onion soup should have lots of cheese, so don't be shy with your cheese. And this is probably quite easy for you to handle instead of grating. At work we grate it. I use 3 cheeses at work. We use Parmesan, Gruyere, and the American Cheddar. We have a little bit of Worcester sauce. On top, very English thing, English sauce, Lee and Perry. But again, I quite like it. It gives it a little kick, the whole thing. A little bit of smoked paprika on top. And that goes in the oven. So the cheese melts, and we're going to sit that on top of the onion soup. Two minutes in the oven. Will be fine. Keep your workplace tidy. This is a classic lion head cup, classic soup cup from France, and 99% of all bistros use this for their onion soup. Classically, you actually put your onion soup in, you put your crouton in, and then you put the whole thing in the oven. So this comes out piping hot. Makes the service a little bit more complicated. So what we do is we have a hot cup, we fill in the hot soup, and then we top that with the hot cheese crouton. But if you ever go to France, if you ever go in a bistro in Paris or Lyon, the chances that they bake it in the oven. So just be really, really careful, because the cup is going to be piping hot, and usually the cups are also dirty with the cheese running over. Good experience. Our onion soup is almost done. I'm going to take the bay leaf out. I'm going to have a little taster, because food is about taste. That's good. Maybe 2 more minutes. Again, it's important that the beef stock is not salty, because as you reduce it, it becomes very intense. So make sure your beef stock is not salty. You can add the salt. You can add the salt after. Look at our cheese crouton. Coming on nicely. I think we're ready to serve it up. So cup. There's our little cheese croutons. A depending how you like it. You could serve them on the side, but as I said, classically, it's served on top. For today, as I like cheese and I love onion soup, I treat myself to 2 little croutons in that soup. So here you have it, my version of the classic French onion soup with Guinness, just like I learned it at the Dorchester 25 years ago, actually 30 years ago. And this recipe's been with me since then. So please enjoy. Thanks very much for joining me.